Okay, welcome to the Node.js release working group meeting on the 17th of June 2021. As usual, we work through the agenda that's in the Node.js release issue, which is issues 6, 7, 8. Before we start, are there any announcements anyone would like to make on the stream? No. Okay, I think it probably makes sense to start with the additional topic first and then review the schedules afterwards, because the topic that we're going to discuss may have an impact on the schedule potentially. So if we could start with talking about the minimum ICU version change in Node 14. I don't know if Richard, you can happy to summarize that for us.
Yeah, sure. So there was a comment made in a PR regarding updating ICU to ICU 69, saying that they were unable to build Node 14.17.1 on, I forget which operating system now, but basically they were building against the system ICU, and they were building against system ICU that was version 65. And I had a look at, so for ICU, there's two minimum versions. One's in V8 and one is in Tools ICU, or tool under Tools. We have a minimum ICU version, and it looks like in 14.00 we went out with a minimum ICU version of 65. So it was SLES. So SLES 15. They're building against system ICU 65, which for Node 14.00 met the minimum ICU version. It looks like we had a V8 update in 14.60, which bumped the ICU minimum up to 67. So that's from 65 to 67. I'm guessing it didn't actually break the build because no one's actually complained about that yet. But in 14.71, with the ICU 69 update, that's also had a V8 patch, and that V8 patch is broken compiling V8 on ICU 65. So I guess the question in the PR was, what's the policy on breaking compatibility with external dependencies during the LTS lifecycle? And I kind of believe that we don't really have a written policy for that, but it's probably that we'd like to avoid it. And the question is, what do we do? Because obviously there isn't a V8 sort of interlinking with this. Would fixing the minimum ICU version for the lifetime of LTS sort of hold up potential V8 updates, for example? Or is it something we think we can work around? What do we think we should do with Node 14, given that we've already bumped the minimum up once since we GA'd 14? And the current minimum version, I don't know for certain that that's, I haven't tried to build 14.17.1 with ICU 67. We didn't bump it up with the V8 patch that went in last time, but yeah, I don't know what sort of other thought,
Yeah, I guess
thoughts are in the group.
I think when things like this have happened before, we've just addressed them on a case-by-case basis. So I guess trying to figure out what the right call is to do here. Is reverting the change to the minimum possible without completely reverting like massive chunks of V8? Do you know if that's possible?
I don't know right this moment. So at least for 14.71, it looked like it was just one V8 patch. But that V8 patch was supposedly because ICU 68 or 69 has dropped an internal API that V8 was using. So without really looking at it, I suspect it probably is possible to patch that, because I think it's a V8 internal, so it shouldn't sort of be visible to the outside. If we can perhaps ifdef or something, put something in the V8 source to sort of conditionally compile on the version of ICU that's available.
I don't know exactly what we can do, what all the options are, but one obvious option would be to revert the ICU update and the related V8 patch.
Yeah.
So go back to ICU 68 on v14 and stop upgrading it.
Yeah, that's potential.
The minimum ICU version on our side is just a field in a JSON file. I think it's here to just to tell us that some breaking change are coming.
I believe if you build against a system ICU, it does check that version against the minimum.
Okay.
So,
but since I do the V8 updates, and I know that I have to bump it because it doesn't build if the minimum version on our side is different from the minimum version on the V8 side.
Yeah, we have an explicit test for that as well.
Rolling back to the previous minimum version, I think it's not doable. We would have to probably to revert all the V8 updates.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I guess definitely. I guess then either we revert the ICU down, or I can spend a little bit of time seeing if we can patch it. But if not, then let's
maybe we can reintroduce the API that they removed or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll take a look. But yeah, it definitely sounds like we probably don't really want to intentionally prevent things that we're building from building in especially since 17.1 was a patch release. It wasn't even a minor.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, leave that with me then. I'll see what we can do without it. And if I can't figure out something in the next day or so, well, we will just revert. I'll open a PR to revert the ICU update.
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay, but we can still continue talking about this because the next V8 update, which is 9.2, also bumps the minimum ICU version.
Oh, okay.
And so the question is now, what do we do with version 16?
Yeah, it's a good question. I only looked at 14, so I don't know what the current ICU minimum. I don't know. I can't remember if we bumped the minimum. I presume we must have done with V8 sort of 9. I'd have to go and check, but yeah, whatever the minimum is, and then whether the next V8 version that really is a minimum, or that's just them conservatively bumping the version to match the version that's in the V8 source tree.
Usually, when they bump the version is when they need to do that because they use an API that's not in earlier versions, or they do refactorings that that are not compatible.
This was what 9.3 you were referring to, or 9.2? Yeah.
This is in 9.2.
Okay.
Yeah, 9.2.
Yeah, the one with the in the open PR. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I referenced, so I did a separate commit bumping the ICO version, and inside there's a reference to the V8 commit that did it, and they changed some code where they use ICU.
Right. Okay.
Maybe we can just revert that and still upgrade.
I guess for V8, in order for V8 to land a V8, in order for 9.2 to land on 16, I'm guessing we'd have to scan it for any API breakages anyway. Because I saw for the 9.1 update for Node 16, you went through a slightly different process to sort of go through the commits and check them for compatibility. So it's not going to be a straight dump of V8 9.2 into 16, is it?
No, it's not. But it's never V8 API that changes. It's internals, so it's more difficult to find out.
Yeah. So I guess the question is whether. So I think this comes back to another open issue we've got in Node, which is whether we have the test coverage to catch regressions if we say revert something related to ICU in V8, that we would have any confidence that hasn't broken something locale specific, or in one of those internationalization APIs. Because I don't think the existing Intel tests on Node 14 caught the thing that we currently have a V8 backport open for. that doesn't seem to fail any of the existing Intel tests. So yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, and I don't know
Coverage.
what can catch it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I guess we could also reach out to the I don't know how active they are now, but the I18N API team in Node to see if they've got any views on sort of fixing an ICU version versus continually upgrading it. Okay.
I vaguely recall a issue in the release repository that had a quite lengthy debate about changing ICU versions during release lifetimes.
Yeah, and it's very easy for us to just say we won't update it, but then that does have implications. For example, if that might prevent us taking V8 updates.
Yeah, and in the opposite sense, I'm sure I've also seen issues saying, "Hey, please update," so because I would like some edits to the time zone. So
that's correct, but I think we can update the time zone data separately. I think we have done that in the past.
Fair enough.
Okay, I guess unless anyone else has anything else to bring up, we just sort of continue discussing that. I guess we could either create another issue or in the in an existing issue somewhere. But,
yeah, maybe creating an issue, just the concept of updating them in release lines, and then we can bring in the folks from the internationalization groups that may have other opinions.
All right, I'll open an issue after the meeting.
Yeah, it sounds good for the plan for this one, to try and see if we can patch it, work around it, and if not, open a revert.
Okay.
Okay.
Next on the list, I think probably makes sense to go through the schedules. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so for node 16, we are scheduled up until the end of the month, and then we have some gaps after that. But I think that's probably fine as long as we're scheduled a few weeks in advance. That's good. I guess, do you know what date you're looking at for the node 16.4, is it?
Yeah, hopefully today, but I think NPM goes out like midday for me. So I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get the build and approvals by pull that change in. So honestly, it'll probably be tomorrow.
Would Tuesday, deferring to next Tuesday, be preferable? In that case, or just a Friday.
Yeah, I can do any day. I guess just in terms of what expectations are. So I don't know if Tuesday is an arbitrary day, or if there's some kind of service level agreement that says, oh, we should get it out as close to the release date as possible. So yeah, but I'm good. I can do whatever.
Yeah, I think generally Tuesday is kind of arbitrary, but it does align with quite a few folks going for patch Tuesdays. That's just tends to be what we schedule it for. We do say it can always be flexible. I think the one thing we've traditionally tried to avoid is Friday releases, because of consideration for dumping releases on people who have to manage the upgrades just before the weekend. So that's the only suggestion about delaying it to next week.
Okay.
For doing a Friday release. I don't know whether other folks still think avoiding Friday ones is worth doing, or
I think that makes sense, just for anyone that's using a build or node for build, and they maybe haven't locked their node version, and if a new version comes through, then that might break some builds without them knowing. So I think that's probably a good policy to still have.
Yeah, sure. But aside from that, I I don't think it matters if it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, even Thursday. It's just what works for us. But I think trying to keep the schedule with Tuesdays, it just helps manage the expectations for folks.
Okay. And then I guess, so maybe we could talk about it really quickly right now then. Do we think that, I guess since we already have a 16x coming in now, 12 days, and do we even want to wait for that NPM release, or should I just go through with it? And should I just take all of the NPM stuff out now? And then those changes can go in the next 16x release. That's the other option, is that I just I can just do it right now because the release is pretty much ready.
Yeah, I think that would make sense in this case, like backing out the problematic commits from the proposal and then shipping what we have. And then that gives time for, say, the new NPM update lands today on the main branch. It gives time for that to kind of bake, like an extra 10 or so days.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're kind of like rushing a few commits in that haven't been on the main branch very long. So maybe that approach makes sense, because that means the stuff we're shipping's been on there a bit longer. So there's no surprises or less surprises.
Okay. Yeah, I would prefer that then. Yeah, because then I think we run the risk of like, something that's like a pretty big dependency, and then that comes in, and then let's say like that something there isn't backwards compatible or whatever, then we have to wait a little bit longer. So okay, that works for me.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then I don't think it's a problem having just like the slightly shorter 12 days between the releases. I think we can keep the schedule as is that way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for current, we've at times gone like a release every week. So it just depends on content and availability of releases.
And just Roy in the chat saying sounds good to him. So we'll go with that.
Cool.
So that was our schedule for node 16, and then for node 14, where are we at? Well, we had the 14.17.1 release this month. How urgently do we think we would need to get that revert out? Do we need to like have an expedited release or something?
I can't remember what else was in 14.17.1. I did look at it, I just don't remember. I probably wouldn't want to go out to another. So the next release is what, scheduled for July? Yeah, I probably wouldn't want to go too far into July.
I think maybe early July might be okay though. Like if we can aim to get out in the first week. Still try to have a couple of weeks between releases, unless people think like it's going to be a blocker, for that user who's maybe they're hitting a critical bug and they can't upgrade.
This ICU issue is with someone who does a custom build of Node, right?
Well, I don't know if they are a distro maintainer, SLES. So typically Linux packages build Node against shared libraries rather than the same way we build the releases, the binary releases. I don't know. I'd have to go check. I have seen his name before, so I think he might actually be a packager, a Linux packager for SLES.
But is it an option that they revert on their side before building it?
Possibly. I don't know. Yeah, you mean the entire ICU update? Yeah, possibly. I'll open the issue and ask them as well when we discuss.
Okay, so that might factor into the timings, but probably depending on availability, the earliest reasonable is probably the first week of July anyway.
If it was a revert, it will probably just be a release to just revert that commit, I think, if it was deemed.
Yeah,
well,
probably.
urgent's not the right word, but sort of, sooner rather than later. I wouldn't want to bundle it up with too many other commits. Okay.
Okay, I guess after you've investigated and determined the correct approach, and we've also opened that issue, then maybe then we can better make the call on whether it needs something more urgently, rather than waiting a couple of weeks or so until we have availability.
Okay.
Okay, and I just added myself for the next minor release.
Sounds good. That'd be the last one before maintenance, won't it? I think.
Yes, and I already have a list of things that I would like to backport, and I will work on it as soon as the patch is done, the next patch.
Sounds good. I vaguely recall, was there something modules related or something that was in the plan? I think Miles may have mentioned something that he was hoping to get into a later minor.
No, it's not modules related, but maybe there are things still for modules. I don't know.
I have to dig it out. I remember seeing someone saying, hey, back this out of the 14.16 and pull it into a later release. I guess as long as we go through the stuff marked LTS watch and baking for LTS, we should pick that.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So it's just July patch release, but we're trying to figure out the timings after we've seen the results of our ICU investigations. Then we have Node 12, and I've seen, Richard, you've scheduled one in.
I've arbitrarily picked a date. So it doesn't have to be right then, we can push it out a bit, but I'd like to schedule a 12 release. There is a bit of stuff building up on the staging branch now, and there was another PR I saw that I think Anna put in that was a fix for bindings or something for embedders. So that could also land on the 12 staging branch. Yeah, it's been a while. We haven't had a 12 release since April, and that was a security release. So just a sort of smallish, I think. I don't think there's much, but there's probably enough stuff to do a small release.
Sounds good. Yeah, as long as we've got availability and there's some bits on the branch, I don't see why not. After a couple of months, shipping a release seems reasonable. Seems like good timing. So yeah, thanks, Richard.
Okay.
And then I guess after that, we just kind of, as we have, play it by ear, seeing what's on the open backports and stuff to make the call for future release.
Yeah.
Sounds good. And I think that was everything on our list to discuss today, unless anyone has any other topics to raise. Nope. Okay. With that, I'll leave it at that and speak to you all later. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.